You think every fast food chain started out cheap and forgettable? Steak and Shake didn't. It was built on a radical promise, grinding real steak in front of you to prove it was worth twice the price. For nearly 90 years, that promise made it special, with table service, hand-dipped shakes, and spotless diners open around the clock, until the company stripped it all away, and the chain that built its name on showing you the quality became a counter where you see no one at all. You will discover how a Depression-era gas station became one of America's most beloved diners, and how, in trying to save itself, it forgot the very thing that made it worth saving. And by the end, you will learn how it came within days of bankruptcy, and the strange, controversial bet that kept it alive, but unrecognizable. It all starts with a man wheeling a barrel of steaks past his hungry customers. This is the rise and fall of an American institution. How does a diner famous for showing you everything end up hiding the one thing that made it special? In early 1934, Augustus Gus Belt returned to Normal, Illinois, after 4 years of disciplined service in the United States Marine Corps. Alongside his wife Edith, he ran a modest roadside Shell gas station on the corner of South Main Street and Virginia Avenue, right along Route 66. The couple operated a small eatery inside, selling fried chicken, coleslaw, and cold beer to passing motorists. A sudden local crackdown on alcohol threatened to destroy their entire business model overnight. Gus and Edith secured a $300 loan to completely reinvent the space. They removed the fuel pumps and remodeled the interior, but they still had to solve a persistent problem: the widespread public suspicion of ground meat. Gus found his answer in pure theater. He wheeled a heavy wooden barrel packed with whole T-bone, sirloin, and round steaks directly into the dining room. Before the eyes of skeptical customers, he ground the premium cuts into fresh patties. How does a desperate, one-time stunt inside a tiny Illinois gas station harden into a strict operational code that defines a brand for nearly a century? During the Great Depression, ground beef was cheap, mysterious, and widely feared. Scrap meat and questionable fillers often ended up in the local butcher's grinder, leaving families highly suspicious of any pre-ground patty. Gus Belt bypassed this skepticism by positioning his kitchen as a stage. Instead of generic hamburgers, he marketed steak burgers. By selecting choice sirloin, round, and T-bone steaks to grind in plain view, Belt proved his product was premium. This transparency justified a premium price tag. At a time when standard hamburgers went for a nickel, Belt charged 10 cents. The double price was not a deterrent. It was the entire point, communicating quality to a budget-conscious public. Belt consolidated this theater of trust into 5 words: in sight, it must be right. What began as a visual guarantee of sanitation transformed into a radical brand promise. This simple counter-ritual established a standard of clean, honest preparation that soon faced its first major test. Scaling this intimate performance across dozens of new locations, Gus Belt designed a dining room that functioned as an instrument of reassurance. Every surface gleamed. Brightly lit and wrapped in spotless tile, the original counters sat directly against an open kitchen where customers traced their meal's progress from raw steak to sizzling patty. This theater of hygiene made the physical space as important as the food itself. Soon, the performance spilled out into the parking lot. Uniformed curb hops carried heavy trays to idling automobiles, establishing a drive-in culture so popular that local police were called to direct traffic outside the busiest Illinois locations. Patrons waited in idling cars and long lines along the roadside just to sit at these immaculate counters. This entire operational system depended on high-touch labor, constant scrubbing, and meticulous human choreography. Maintaining this spotless, interactive atmosphere required an army of dedicated staff, establishing an expensive standard of service that would one day turn from a core strength into a crushing financial burden. To scale this high-touch experience with speed, Belt found savings in construction. but never in his ingredients. During the late 1930s, he acquired the regional Goalpost Diner chain, converting those existing roadside structures into gleaming new restaurants. This aggressive reuse of old service stations pushed the company to 8 locations by the end of 1939. Then, global conflict threatened to choke off his supply lines. As World War II rationing squeezed businesses nationwide, Belt refused to compromise on his premium standards. He purchased a farm in McLean County, taking direct ownership of the land that produced his meat, milk, and vegetables. Controlling his ingredients upstream insulated the business from a volatile market. But clean fields were only half the equation. Expanding this theater across state lines depended on a strict human culture that could not be grown in a pasture. Post-war expansion carried this disciplined theater across the Illinois state line and deep into St. Louis, where 14 busy dining rooms soon anchored the brand's growing Midwestern footprint. Inside these locations, the dining experience felt heavy and permanent. Customers ate off real ceramic china, sipping thick milkshakes hand-dipped from metal canisters. Uniformed waitstaff navigated the tiled floor, bringing full table service to a loyal blue-collar crowd. Every single shift began with a rigorous inspection of aprons, fingernails, and paper caps. This meticulous care fostered deep pride among young employees, who operated with a precise operational rhythm and visible dignity. These human rituals elevated the diner far above the cheap, self-service drive-ins of the era. Soon, however, the very habits that defined the brand's premium identity began to register as quiet operational drag. Decades later, corporate executives would look at this carefully choreographed dance and reclassify these beloved strengths as expensive weaknesses. On August 20th, 1954, Gus Belt suffered a fatal heart attack. The sudden loss threatened to dismantle the operational discipline he had spent 20 years perfecting. Instead, his wife Edith stepped forward. For 15 years, she helmed the company with quiet determination, proving that the Theater of Trust was not merely one man's gimmick, but a replicable science. Under her stewardship, the gleaming counters remained spotless, and the hand-dipped milkshakes never wavered in quality. When Edith sold the enterprise in 1969, she handed over a thriving Midwestern institution. What followed was a rapid succession of corporate stewards. The brand passed to Longchamps, then the Franklin Corporation, and eventually to E.W. Kelly and Associates, who relocated the corporate headquarters from Normal, Illinois, to Indianapolis. Despite these changes at the top, the public experience held together. Even as the footprint grew towards 600 locations, customers still sat in high-backed booths and watched their steak burgers sizzle on the grill. What happens to a beloved diner once it becomes an asset to be bought, sold, and moved? By 2008, the grease-stained ledger of Steak 'n Shake had become a scene of corporate devastation. The chain was hemorrhaging approximately $100,000 every single day. Cash reserves had shriveled to just over $1 million, a microscopic cushion when measured against a towering wall of $27 million in debt. Bankruptcy was an imminent destination, with liquidation hovering over every tiled counter. Then came Sardar Biglari, a 31-year-old hedge fund manager with a sharp eye for distressed assets. Biglari seized control of the listing vessel in August of that year. He built his reputation far from typical industry glad-handing and glossy television profiles, speaking to the public primarily through cryptic, sprawling shareholder letters that read like a blend of poetry and corporate strategy. Under his gaze, the company ceased to be a preservation project for Midwestern diner nostalgia. The operation turned entirely to raw financial triage. Saving the business meant managing a numbers game rather than protecting a beloved community kitchen. This corporate battle was now fought over balance sheets, far removed from the sizzle of the open grill. Can a pure financial mind rescue a failing business without rewriting the identity that made it worth saving? Biglari's survival strategy was swift and clinical. He discarded the sprawling 8-page menu, replacing it with a single, streamlined bifold that focused entirely on the company's core strengths: steak burgers, fries, and milkshakes. To pull cash-strapped customers back through the doors during a national recession, he introduced aggressive, persistent discounting, anchoring the brand to rock-bottom price points like the famous $4 meals. The operational drag of slow-moving menu items vanished overnight, simplifying kitchen preparation and speeding up service. Profits responded with immediate, staggering force. Within 2 years, the catastrophic daily loss of $100,000 flipped completely, turning into a daily operating profit of $100,000 by the end of 2010. This rapid recovery initiated an extraordinary run of 29 consecutive quarters of same-store sales growth. Business journals marveled at the turnaround, hailing the young hedge fund manager as a corporate genius who had saved a beloved Midwestern classic through sheer mathematical discipline. On paper, the rescue was an absolute triumph of corporate execution. Yet, as the registers hummed with cheap transactions, the physical experience inside the restaurants was being quietly hollowed out to pay for those pristine balance sheets. Behind the bright, cheap paper menus, the physical spaces slowly began to decay. Corporate slashed capital improvement budgets, leaving older Midwestern dining rooms to wear down under a heavy weight of deferred maintenance, peeling vinyl booths, and flickering fluorescent lights. Inside the kitchens, this clinical financial squeeze translated to immediate human costs. Management systematically trimmed hourly wages, sliced employee benefits, and pinched labor hours to the absolute minimum to protect the parent company's new profit margins. Long-service workers who had spent decades proudly polishing chrome counter stools and starching paper caps under the old family ethos suddenly found themselves working in understaffed, chaotic environments where speed replaced care. One former district manager, who had climbed the corporate ranks over 30 years after starting his career as a teenage busboy, walked through his territory and realized the trademark service and cleanliness had entirely evaporated. His final verdict on the transformation was simple. It just was not Steak and Shake anymore. The razor-thin margins of this new bargain model could no longer support the heavy, hands-on labor that the classic diner concept still required to function. Around 2016, the cheap pricing strategy collided directly with the expensive reality of high-touch service. Modern fast casual rivals poached customers, dragging Steak and Shake back into losing quarters. The financial strain quickly turned into legal warfare. Store managers filed class action lawsuits over unpaid overtime, leading to a federal judge ordering a $7.7 million payment for wage violations. At the same time, angry franchise owners sued corporate headquarters, alleging that mandated $4 deals forced their individual locations to run at a loss. The math behind the bargain burger had utterly collapsed. Faced with empty registers and hostile courts, corporate headquarters stopped trying to repair the traditional dining experience and prepared to strip it down to the bones. Sardar Biglari offered corporate stores to operating managers for $10,000 in exchange for 50% of the profits, a radical strategy designed to shift financial liability down the chain. This aggressive transition shuttered or converted hundreds of underperforming locations. To slash overhead further, the company systematically dismantled its 90-year tradition of table service, replacing waitstaff with self-service kiosks. Then, global pandemic shutdowns hit while a crushing $27 million debt wall was coming due. Cash reserves dwindled to near nothing, putting Steak and Shake within days of bankruptcy. A last-minute loan payoff barely kept the company out of immediate collapse, securing survival by the narrowest of margins. This financial escape kept the registers open, leaving a starkly redefined brand in its wake. What kind of restaurant survives after stripping away the labor that once defined it. Step into one of the roughly 400 remaining locations today. The physical reality of the turnaround is immediately clear. Guests no longer find a welcoming host, nor do they slide into high-backed vinyl booths to wait for a dedicated server. Instead, customers face a bank of glowing self-service kiosks. Orders are tapped onto glass screens, paid for with card readers, and carried to laminate tables on plastic trays by the customers themselves. The high-touch human theater of the mid-century diner is entirely gone. Today, the classic slogan, "In sight, it must be right," still hangs on the walls, though it no longer describes a barrel of fresh steaks ground before your eyes, or the skilled hands of a grill cook. It is just words on a wall. Customers stand before a silent counter, waiting for a number to appear on a screen, looking at a chain that survived by forgetting what made it worth saving. Today, Steak and Shake survives behind cold, silent kiosks. The famous black and white tiles remain. Gone is the theatrical grinding of fresh beef, replaced by automated efficiency. In fighting to keep the business alive, the chain forgot what made it worth saving. A brand can endure. Whether it is still Steak and Shake is another story. Share your thoughts in the comments below.